Would like to call to order the Select Board meeting of June 5th, 2023. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, we will go into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations with the
Finance Director.
Finance Director. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we're going to vote. Mr. Gracie is not here. We're going to vote on this motion. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. We'll go into executive session. We will be short. We will be back here at 5:30 for our workshop with the ZBA. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. We have had, the Select Board has had a series of workshops, we call them, with 3 or 4 different. We're going to try to go through as many boards, committees over the years as we can, because we feel that, it's been very productive, and we feel like we're getting a lot out of it. So welcome. We appreciate you being here. We started planning this back in October, and we're finally through town meeting season and finance season, so we were able to get start up again. We've had a few other issues come along, so thank you.
I haven't.
Okay, so the note we sent to the members was that we'd like to hear from you individually. Your methodology for decision-making and the utilization of internal and external resources. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, introduce yourself, and then if you'd like to speak, and then each person can introduce as they go along.
Certainly.
Is that format okay?
That's fine. So my name is Attorney Michael Medeiros. I reside obviously here in Dartmouth. I
That's good.
served as the chairman of the board now for, I believe, a year, maybe 2. And I'm here with my members, but they can each identify themselves. You can start with Bob.
My name is Robert Gardner Jr. I reside here in Dartmouth, and I've been on the board for a long time. And that saves my lack of memory. But I've been on the board for a long time. I think we've served the town of Dartmouth very, very well. We always try to adhere to the tenets of the town and to be as fair as possible with the people who reside here. And I think we all do a very good job. We get along well together, and we perform well as a board.
Thank you, Bob.
My name is Halim Chuba. I'm the vice chair. I've been on this board for probably longer than Bob, probably 15 years. I'm a professional engineer. That's my background, and I have extensive experience in zoning. I've been doing this for probably 30 years, and I think I really appreciate being here. I've been in this town for almost 40 years, and actually this was my first exposure to America. I came straight from high school to go to college at SMU back then, and I stayed here. I had the opportunity to move somewhere else. I didn't go anywhere. I raised my kids here. My kids were born in this town. They went to high school. They graduated from college now, and it's my pleasure to serve this town.
Next, Doctor.
Hello, my name is Rahim Agai. I was in medical practice up to 2004. Then when I retired, I went to UMass, got a degree in business administration, and have been involved in different businesses, in different situations. I've been on the board for about 7 to 8 years, and I have been alternate, and have been sitting on for almost every time that we have meetings. I come to make sure that I'm with them in the same, so we can communicate with each other in a good condition. Okay, thank you.
Board members, my name is Walter Faria. I sit as an alternate on the Board of Appeals. I also sat in your seat, Mr. Chairman, for 10 years. I've lived in Dartmouth all my life, and I've been a student of the town of Dartmouth as far as its government is concerned for a long time. And I would like to say at this meeting today that I've studied the Board of Appeals. This is probably the finest board that I've seen. They had some tough decisions, but we have another member here who's not here, who's an attorney, an excellent attorney, Alvin Newman. We've got an engineer, we've got a doctor, we've got Bob, who's got a lot of real estate experience. I've never seen a board, and I've sat mostly as an alternate, but make decisions and come up with right decisions for the town of Dartmouth and to help individuals out. I'd like to say something, and I don't want to take up a lot of time here, but the Board of Appeals is what it is. It's to hear appeals where somebody has been hurt by the town bylaw or whatever it is. It's not an easy job. It really isn't. But I'd like to tell you my experience that when I was a young lawyer, I bought a piece of property in Dartmouth on Wilson Street, and I had, I think, 98-foot frontage to build a house. And I went to get a building permit, and the building commissioner said, you don't have enough frontage, you need 2 feet. You have to have 100 feet. And I looked around, I said, all my neighbors have 50 feet, 76 feet. They're all small lots in Dartmouth. So he said, well, you have to get a variance. And at the time, the board, and I don't want to criticize any past boards, but there was like helter-skelter. You didn't know what was going to happen. A lot of it was politics or whatever. And luckily, I got to build a house because they gave me a variance for 2 feet. And that's when I started thinking about the Board of Appeals and did some studying. We're governed by a statute that's pretty tough. So they don't make decisions on a helter-skelter basis. Every decision has to comply with that statute that says the property has unique problems or there's something that people need relief. And I thought that, and my neighbors thought the same thing. They all came to the Board of Appeals meeting and said, we're in favor. You have the biggest lot in the area, but that's what the Board of Appeals is about, helping people out and also taking the town's interest at heart in the best interest of the town. That's what this board does, and as I said, I'm proud to be an alternate. Michael Medeiros is one of the finest lawyers I know. It's just a delight to be on that board right now because decisions are made with the best interest of everyone, the people that are applying in the town of Dartmouth. It's a tough decision.
Thanks. Well, we have just before 6:30, and I think the consensus here was that we'd like to hear from either individual as a group. Is how do you make a decision? What's the process? And I assume each member wants to speak, but I'll leave it up to the chairman to sort that out.
That's fine, I can start with that. So, quite frankly, the process, it's changed a little bit as far as how members of the board have access to our department. We were taking paper applications at one point, or traditionally and historically, that's how it's been done. I would say over approximately the last 6 months, there's now a website in which there's a portal that people have access to. I find that some people have a little difficulty with it, but it's like most things, there's a learning curve to it. And I think in the long haul, I think people are going to find that it's actually more beneficial and it's more accessible by having the computer access versus having to actually walk down a paper application and submit it as such. So each and every week, we usually get it on the Friday before the scheduled meeting date. Our scheduled meetings are on Wednesdays. We used to have them on Tuesdays, but at some point we decided as members of the board that it met our schedule best, and we started conducting our hearings on Wednesday evenings at 6 o'clock. We get the packet submitted to us. It has the application along with all the supporting documentation, usually a narrative. At times, the narrative is not as long as we would like it to be to have an explanation, but for the most part, it'll have the application, it'll have a denial letter from the building inspector, and there we find that to be very, very helpful, having a denial letter, because it indicates specifically what the building inspector feels that the person needs for relief in order to be able to move forward with their project and obtain a building permit. Now, in addition to that, we also get comments from other segments of town, other boards, things such as the planning board. They'll give us some input. At times, the Conservation Commission will give us some input if the property is located within a certain distance of a wetlands protection area. We also get input from the DPW, and we also get input from the Board of Health. And on occasion, I think we've actually had letters sent to us from your board as to maybe what the position may be or a suggestion that would come from the board. So we review that. We also, at times, we get design plans of what the construction of the project is going to look like. So we get elevations, we know what the dimensions are. Many of these plans are submitted and approved by either a licensed architect or an engineer. We also require on each of these submissions, if there's going to be some type of construction, that there be a registered plan signed by a registered land surveyor verifying the boundary so that we know specifically what relief these people are looking for maybe a front yard setback, a rear yard setback, or even a height requirement where they're going to need relief for the 35-foot if it's in a residential district. Once we review that, we get a sense of what the case is about. But I think as a board, we try to not pass judgment on just what the documents say on themselves. We also want to hear from the petitioner and also from the members of the community. So we'll have a hearing. We open the hearing every time that we have one, right here. I probably sit the same chair that you're sitting in right now, Mr. Chairman, and I'm honored to do so. And obviously, we all sit here at the behest of your board. We're appointed. We're not a political body, right? We're a body. We're a quasi-judicial body. It's been referred to by many Supreme Court decisions that we serve as a quasi-judicial body, where we're not politically appointed. We make decisions based on the evidence that's before us. Here, the evidence usually is documents that are presented to us. There's a petitioner that comes forward. They usually have either an engineer or they'll have an attorney make a presentation. And I always try to listen as best as I can to what that presentation is. Because there are times, I'll be honest, there are times I'm kind of uncertain as to where things are going to go. And there have been numerous times in which we're persuaded by the position and the arguments that the petitioner makes, either through the counsel or through the engineer. We also then open up the hearing to members of the public. We always have an opportunity to have people either in favor or in opposition speak. I think I learned through prior chairman, being Mr. Schuber. I sat as a member while he was chairman. I also sat as a member while Mrs. Jackie, what's her name? Figueredo. Miss Figueredo sat. I learned from her over the years that we always give people an opportunity to be heard. So there have been numerous times where some of these requests become a little more contentious. And when I say contentious, I mean I like the fact that people come forward, because that means that people care about what their community is about. People care about what's going to be built either down the road or next door, or they want to hear about it. So we always give people an opportunity to express their opinions, their concerns. I'm very fortunate to sit on this board, not only that we have more lawyers that I can defer to or listen to when we're here in an open meeting, but I also have an engineer who usually sits to my right. Today he's sitting to my left, but he usually sits to my right when I sit up there, and he provides a lot of insight that I otherwise don't have, and I wouldn't have because it's not my profession. So I think that collectively, between the documents that are submitted, the petitioner's request and their presentation, and then in addition to that, the input of the members of the town, we take all of that, and those are what we would consider as, when judges, when courts look at these things, that is evidence. Now, you can give greater weight to one form of testimony or to certain documents. We have the ability to put the weight that we want as individuals on how we're to be persuaded on that. However, we apply that to the law, and the law is pretty specific on this. It's been a long-time statute that's existed for quite some time. I know that sitting on this board has given me an entirely different perspective, because as a lawyer of almost 30 years, I've done a lot of land use work, and I've represented petitioners in other towns and communities. I've also filed appeals of certain decisions. I filed administrative appeals of determinations of building inspectors in other towns that are surrounding our very town. Unfortunately, obviously, I can't do that here because of the fact that I sit on the board now. But these are all things that I've done and I've had the experience. But certainly, it's a different perspective when you have to either grant or deny something. It's an entirely different feeling. It's a lot easier to ask. I think it's a lot easier to ask because you can always get it. You may get it and you may not. But the problem with making the decision, I think that some of us, we struggle with how we're going to apply the facts to the law to ensure that we're doing the right thing as a matter of law, as a board. And we discuss it. We discuss it, and there are times we deny, and there are times we grant. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say with this. If any of the other board members would like to elaborate further, but that is sort of the methodology, if you will, Other than what goes on in my mind, which I can only share so much of, but other than that, I think that that's the approach that all of us have taken. And I took this approach as a result of not only my experience as an attorney, but also in watching and learning from the people that were here before me. As I'm sure all of you yourselves have come to learn when you come on the first time, it's a big undertaking, right? It's a big undertaking. We have a lot of people to answer to. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I think Attorney Medeiros covered it all, but just to, through the process, also part of the process, we always take the time to go look at the cases before the hearing, just to get a feeling on the neighborhood, the setting, before we make any decision. But in terms of making a decision, it's very clear. I mean, statutory requirements of Chapter 40A, Section 10, it tells you exactly what you need to look for facts. This is where we look at, because zoning is kind of more like a legal issue. It's not about feeling that, we feel this house is too big for this lot. It's not about feeling, it's not about neighbors. It's about neighbors in a way, but it's about applying the laws. So we look at the facts, we look at each case-by-case basis. We hear the presentation, we listen to the neighbors, we listen to the other boards too, because other boards have their input. And also, if it's a special permit, it's very clear in the zoning bylaws, there's criteria that you have to meet the special permit, so we go by every item by item to make sure they meet those criteria. If they met the criteria, they met the statutory requirements, we feel that we can grant the variance, we grant it. True, sometimes we might make decisions that may not please everyone. I don't think we can please everyone in the town or neighbors, or this is part of the job. We have a group of very competent and professional individuals. We also run our businesses, so we understand what it takes to run a business and what it takes to be on the other side. Personally, I'm here maybe once every 2 weeks, but I'm 2 times a week, I'm in another town on the other side, on the podium, presenting. So that gives me insight on how people think, developers or business people or town bodies. I have that, and I apply it to the best I can. But basically, it's clear, it's zoning, we understand zoning. Most of us are either in legal professions or engineering, and we do the best we can, and always the town of Dartmouth is in our heart and on mind to make the best decision for all. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else?
Yes, I'd just like to add something. I'm not an attorney and I'm not an engineer, but I sat for, I believe it was 13 years on the planning board in New Bedford. I served under 3 different mayors, starting with Rosemary Tierney. And that has given me a unique perspective also about what other tenants come into making decisions. And I've seen it, I've worked it on both sides of that table. So I bring that to this board, and many times it comes in handy to form an opinion based upon the law. I also, as Mr. Chuba has said that he does, I try to get out to every single site. I can't get out to every single site, but I try to every single site to look at it, to see. I ring the doorbell and I say, what are you planning to do? Who are you? I'm Robert Gardner. I sit on the Board of Appeals for the town of Dartmouth. And I'd just like to know what's going on before we sit in the meetings. And everybody is very nice. Oh, let me show you. You know, they walk me out, this, that, and the other thing. Well, Mr. Gardner, what do you think? I said, I don't tell you what I think. That's going to be done in the board hearing. And I just want to get your perspective on what you're trying to do. You're trying to dig, you're trying to build, you're trying to put a foundation. Show me what you're doing. And then when I come here and they make their presentation to Mr. Medeiros or Mr. Chuba, and they say, this is what I'm doing, I have a picture in my mind. I know what they're doing. And if they err a little bit on one side, I speak up and I try to correct it. And it works well for us, and we work very well as a unit and a board. And I appreciate my time here. It's well spent. I came here from New Bedford, and I live in the town now, so I want to give something back. And this is my way of doing that.
Anybody else?
I just have one comment that I would like to say, that one of the unique things about the Board of Appeals that probably is unique to the town of Dartmouth is all the decisions have to be unanimous. And that's a check and balance that your board doesn't have, the planning board doesn't have, and I don't think any board in this town has. So that if there's something, all the information that comes in, if it's not if one person says, I'm not going to vote, that's the end of the variance. And that's important because this board, and I said, this is the finest board that I've seen in the town, and I don't say that easily. It just, everybody clicks because of their background. Mr. Gardner's from the city of New Bedford, but he had extensive real estate background. Dr. Agai's been in real estate all his life. We've got an engineer. Most of the times when we're hearing things, I've been a lawyer for 100 years, but I still, when lawyers come before the board, I still can get bamboozled by lawyers, but the engineers don't get by this gentleman, I can tell you that. And that's important because most of the things we're doing, a lot of it, I think the engineers that come before the board are the most important spokesperson for the people that are trying to get a variance, because that's the information we need the most. Is we want to know how many feet, whatever it is. Lawyers aren't going to tell you that it's got to, that we've done a survey on it. But it's an interesting board, and I just want to emphasize that all of our decisions have to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, if one person doesn't go along with it, then it's over. And that's an important checks and balance that most boards don't have.
Yes, thank you. Board members, I've been in different positions, but basically coming out of the medical practice and going to sit down on ZBA and looking at a different side of the life. It's very important. I drive all the time by the site, make sure what they're asking, is it harmful to the neighbors? Is it harmful to the health of the people? Is it something that it is not useful? For instance, somebody comes like to put a pool in the house but doesn't have enough of, they do not have the meat and boundaries that they required. And why should we really getting a family deprived from having a pool for themselves to use because it doesn't meet the meat and boundaries that the town requires? It is what kind of exception that we give. This is not the routine for everybody. And it really has been helpful. As Walter was saying, different people with a different background, with different input, that makes it excellent decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the board? Mr. Nicholson?
Can I just make one
Sure.
more comment?
Yep.
This is not specifically on methodology as to how we approach, but more as how we function as a board. So one of the things that I tried to do, and it had nothing to do with the fact that any of the predecessors as chairman were overpowering in any way. Since I've taken on and become the chairman, I've been on the board for about 8 or 9 years now, but as chairman only about a year, maybe 2. I always try to ensure that I allow the input for each and every one of our members. I don't want, just because I've got this title of chairman, to sort of be the dominant figure of the board. I think that that's wrong, and that's not the role that the chairman should take. There are times when the chairman, I believe, has to be representative of the board, but when it comes time to make decisions, he shouldn't be the influential individual of making those decisions. So, and I'm sure I've got to check myself on occasion, but I try to ensure that people have the opportunity to speak first, and that we gather the input of all the members, including the alternate members on the night of a hearing, even though they're not making a decision on the facts that are being presented. I want to have their input to see what they're thinking. So I try as a matter of practice to ensure that everyone has a voice, that they get to speak first, and I try to, unless it's an obvious thing that needs to be addressed right at the inception, I try to be the last one to speak about these things, because I don't want there to be a feeling that, one person or one individual's take on an issue should be the dominant one, and that should be what everyone should follow. I think that would be wrong. The other thing that we have that, obviously, I don't have a lot of experience of serving on boards. I've served on a couple of others, but the one thing I like about this board is the fact that we respect each other. And there have been times that we come to different conclusions on different issues, where things are shot down or certain person has a take on something, and we respect that. When we walk away from the table, we're talking to one another. When I say from the table, from the podium, if you will, we walk over to the elevator. We're talking about our families, and we're talking about what we're going to do next week or what's going on. It's things that I think that dynamic is one that I'm not going to say it's unique, but it's one that we share that I'm actually proud of. I'm proud of the fact that we have a very good relationship, and I think I speak for all of us that we respect one another, right? And you got 3 lawyers on this board, and that's not always easy, right? We got 3 lawyers on this board, but I just wanted to make sure I could express that.
Mr. Mixon, do you want to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, thanks. I want to personally thank you all for coming. My background was on the Zoning Board of Appeals many years ago with Halim and Jackie, and seems like forever, but it was always an interesting time for me. It was something new and exciting, and I was quite young in those days. Now I'm a little older. But I always thought about what the charge was for us, myself, when I was a board member. And so I went on the website again. I thought I had it right, but providing zoning relief when appropriate. That's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, you can talk all day long, but that's what you need to live by. That's your charge, or it was our charge always. And I thought we did a pretty good job, and Mr. Medeiros, we made some tough decisions in the past, and didn't. We made a few enemies. It happens. But all in all, I really enjoyed my time, and I want to thank you all for giving of your time, because it's a lot of time. It isn't just that board meeting. It's outside work, talking with people. It's quite a responsibility for a non-paying job. And you take it seriously. I know that. I know every one of you for quite a while. Wally is probably for the longest period of time. But I want to thank you again for taking this so seriously.
Ms. Brooks, you want to speak first, next?
Sure.
Okay.
First of all, sorry. I love the idea of having an alternative, which is an alternate, which is something that most boards do not have, and in some cases that means that they either cannot conduct business if they don't have a quorum, but by having an alternate who attends the meetings and listens to the discussion when a decision is to be made and they need to sit in as a member, they're actually a resource to your board, so I love that idea. I just have a couple of questions. Do you, or not perhaps you, but your secretary, give abutters notice when a particular property is going to be discussed so that they can attend? Do you sometimes ask any other boards to come to the meeting to explain their position, or do you just take the letters that they provide as face value?
All right. I can try to address each one of those. So there's actually a statute that requires notice. And the notice is provided to abutters and then within 300 feet of an abutter. So that requirement is followed. Our secretary, Michelle Vieira, does a very, very good job with that. One of the things that we do is we don't read the abutters list into the record at each and every meeting. We basically instruct the viewers at home that they can come to the office at any point in time, and if they want to review the abutters list, they can do so. But we do it in the interest of time, and also, it'd be quite boring for a viewer at home to listen to all these names being rambled off. And I find that that's a common practice with other ZBA boards, because I do practice in land use, and I go before the zoning board in New Bedford quite often, and that's a practice that they also undertake. Now, with regard to the second question, what was the second question, I'm sorry?
Do you ask boards or members of other boards to come to explain their position, or do you just take the letter as face
So
value?
we are fortunate, our new building inspector, Mr. Braga, he attends just about, I think he's attended every meeting. And it's nice to have him here. Prior to having him, we had two other building inspectors, and they would come if we would ask them to, but sometimes you don't know what pops up during the hearing. And all that would cause is for us to be uncertain and then either continue the matter or sometimes interpolate the issue and then make a decision based on that. But to me, it's always very good, and I'm grateful that he does appear to each and every hearing, because there are times we want to get his interpretation on the matter. Because the thing about zoning is, quite frankly, you can get several lawyers in the room who have extensive decades of legal practice in land use, and they'll all have a different or a slightly different interpretation of the very same bylaw, because it's words, right? And what that word may mean to you and what it may mean to me may be two different things. And those are the things that we dissect. So we have him basically at every single meeting. On occasion, we do call in other boards, but do you recall another board that another member from any other board that may have come before us for any input? I think what's happened is we will ask the secretary, Michelle, to send forth a question to many times a DPW, and then they will write back to us with some form of clarification. I know that that's happened before.
I think conservation.
Town
has
council.
come.
Yeah, have they come before?
I think it was conservation.
I'm not sure, but we've also had the director of planning come before us, and they've made the presentation, right? We've had the planning director come before us. Now, whether or not we asked them to come, or they felt that they needed to present it to us, I don't know what the initiating factor may have been, but I remember them coming before us.
Thank you. The other question was going to be about the building commissioner's attendance, but that's great, because certainly someone goes to the ZBA because the building commissioner has
Denial letter, yeah.
denied it. So it's good to have him there, even if he knows that it may be overturned. It's a reflection on the way that he needed to do his job. So, and my last point has escaped me, so I will leave
Okay,
on that
Mr.
note.
McDonald?
Thanks. One of the genesis of these workshops was not so much what may appear to be coming before the principal's office, but it's more akin to find out how each board in town works. Because when somebody takes a look at what you do, in live or on tape, they just see what's being proposed, but they don't see the reasons why, or how the process works. And this is what's important to get a lot of this process out to people, because to be honest with you, the ZBA kind of operates unless you need them, you don't know anything about them. And they operate in a vacuum in town, because there's a lot of people just say, well, what do they do? Well, this is what they do. And now the reason we want to have this workshop is just to kind of let everybody see what's going on. And there have been many decisions since I've been sitting on this board, and even prior to that, some people don't. Yeah, you can't make everybody happy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we just want to make sure that, that people out there see how, their government operates. And you guys are part of the government, and that's, one of the things. I mean, I've known Walter for a very long time. Sometimes it's ages, but, you know, and I've got to know, you know, a lot of you through your work, and, you know, I do find that this board does do its due diligence, and you know, in the decisions, there may be some decisions I'm not, you know, I don't agree with, but, you know, I'm not going to, you know, that's the process, that's just why. And I'm sure there's decisions I've made up here that you haven't agreed with. So, you don't have to tell me which ones, so. But I think that's one of the things that, not that I want to start doing billable hours or having another attorney at a meeting, but are there times when you feel that you need town council at your meeting just to kind of help you walk through some kind of sticky situation that, you know, instead of having the hearing, stopping the hearing to get a decision, or to get an answer, and then coming back a couple weeks later? Because sometimes with people looking to get something done, comes the old adage, time is money, you know, and they want to get things done right away. I'm wondering if there's something you feel that, you know, maybe sending the agenda to town council and saying, hey, what do you think? Do you think you need to, you know, I mean, because you guys have been at this for a while, you know, and you know what situations are going to come up that require a better look-see than some, you know, than some things. You know, I'm wondering if something like that, you know.
I can say this, Mr. McDonald, there have been instances in which we have had town council sit right where the building inspector would normally sit, and he has provided us with extensive input on certain issues. One of them that I recall was one that had to do with enforcement. It was an enforcement with what was going on at what is now the 40B site, but what was going on there before. We had town council for that. We also had council for the 40B project itself. And we've also had town council on another matter. It escapes me at the moment, but I know he's been here on some other issues. If it's an intricate issue that I know that I don't feel comfortable with, then I would obviously, but there have been times we've actually not had him here, but had him provide us a written opinion on an issue. And that provides us some guidance. I remember the last one that existed was one having to do with a marijuana site, and it had to do with within the actual district itself, but if we would allow that to be granted, it was within 500 feet. So by granting the new one, you would actually place the prior location in a non-conformant status, which was not something that I had ever thought of at any point in time. And I thought it was quite astute to have picked up on that. And I remember that impacted our ability to even consider the matter, to even consider it, which was good.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Gracie, anything for now? Okay.
I had one more thing. Go ahead, because maybe it's on your list.
I've been to a handful of your meetings, and I watched the ones that, I've watched many because I think they're so important to us as a town. And I think you run a fantastic meeting. I think you go out of your way to have people to participate from the general public or from the yeas and nays. And I think the approach you take is one that you try your best to represent the town of Dartmouth. And I think that you really do a good job at that. The only thing that I would add is that it just seems to me, I've heard it said that you try to handle everything on a case-by-case basis. It's a tunnel. And I think there are times, in my perspective, and I'm not on that board, and I'm not an attorney, and I'm not an engineer, but from my perspective, case-by-case can be a little bit limiting because, from my perspective, I'd like to see more participation by boards or town council where it would be, and it may mean a postponement of an issue till the next meeting to get them in here. But I think it seems to me that having more input from town boards that are really relevant to the situation and the decision-making process would be helpful, not to the general public and the residents. And I just think there's maybe not enough of that. I haven't seen town council in there in a long time. And I know that your attitude probably is, as you said, Mr. Medeiros, that when you need him, you call on him. But I got to believe that between that and other issues, there could be more input and more visibility for the boards that really mean the most, and others are more important. And having the building inspector there is a fantastic idea. And he's the guy that we hired to direct the show. People need to go to planning, they need to go to conservation, so he knows what's going on. All the more reason to get other boards involved. And that would be the only addition I have, because I think it would be very helpful from a perspective in general.
I would just like to explain about the case-by-case
Right.
basis. I think there's maybe a different interpretation as to how we approach it versus how maybe your perception may be. Under the law, real estate is considered unique. There are specific remedies that exist with real estate that don't exist in other types of disputes. So one of them specifically is specific performance. Specific performance would allow you to force somebody to sell you their property, because there's no two parcels of real estate that are the same, because they can't sit at the same location. So given that these properties are unique, what we do on a case-by-case basis, what we're trying to say is, we will give it a new look. We're not looking at what we may have done somewhere else. We might have granted a variance here, but the circumstances are different because it's a different property. And the property in and of itself, even though it's down the street, it's unique because it's a different parcel of real estate. And the issues may be different. It may be closer to water. It may be closer and more thickly settled. Those are all things that we take, and I think that's what we try to express when we express to the viewers at home that we look at these on a case-by-case basis, meaning they get a new look every time someone comes before us. We're not necessarily bound by what we may have done on a prior case. But keeping that in mind, we also, I think as a group, we're also mindful of whenever we grant something that we haven't done before, the possible precedent that may set, all right? We're worried about because of the fact that one of the things that we haven't granted as a board since I've sat here, and it wasn't something that I started, it was something that the board, sort of the position that they've had, and it's something that I've carried forward because I've sensed that was the perception that should apply, is that we haven't allowed undersized lots. People have come before us for a lot that doesn't have the minimum square footage. And people are looking to build homes in town. There's only a finite amount of real estate in which there's buildable lots in the general residence area. And I'm sure there are viewers at home right now that may have a lot that's under the 15,000 square feet, that have the frontage, could put up a home, but it's not something that we have granted. Quite frankly, and I want to tie in the word of appropriateness. We try to do what's appropriate, but we also don't want to set a precedent where we're granting something to one person and then we don't grant it to someone else, just because it may seem appropriate in this neighborhood, but not necessarily in another. So we're trying to, it's a balancing act, right? It's not easy in trying to ensure that we're treating these uniquely, that we're trying to keep an open mind for each one, treat it on a case-by-case basis. Just because we granted something in one part of town, we're going to grant it in the other part of town. That may not be the case. So
If another board in town is very vocal in some way, either by how they wrote to you or they show up, they're totally against it for whatever their reasons based on their board's work. I think that's just as an example. I think they deserve to be in here, be visible, and to explain it. And with the purpose to let you know that, and I don't think there's enough of that done. And I'm not saying it would change your vote. Okay. I think people deserve to hear the opposite in a very vociferous way, because and maybe there's two boards involved, and it does come up. And I think we need, in town meeting, what's town meeting feel about it? And I think that it would be best served, and the way you do business and the way you conduct yourselves in such a way that would add a dimension. I think would be very, very helpful.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment on, you mentioned, when I was a select person, about 100 years ago, I think it was, but we had put together a package for all the boards because town council, the use of town council got out of hand. Mm-hmm. And frankly, honestly, what was happening, boards didn't want to make decisions. It was always, well, let town council make the decision, and nothing got done. And what really got done was town council's fees started going up and up and up. It got out of hand. And I don't know what and since I've been on the board, we're never reluctant to call town council, and we have in majors, and the average variance that comes in, you really don't have that many legal problems, but there's been a lot of in the business areas, the business zones, and Mr. Maderis mentioned one about the one that did. I think we got 3 lawyers on the board, and we never even envisioned, the 3 of us discussed it at the meeting, and Mr. Maderis said, well, we're going to send it to town council, get an opinion, which is what we did. And the decision came back, and I was amazed that he picked up something that we never saw. And it was about given a variance to one, which would create a non-conforming use with the other. So he came back and said, you got to give 2 variances, not 1. And we really didn't see that. But we've never been reluctant to get town council involved. I just don't think that town council wants to show up at our meetings to sit there. And I don't think there's a need for that, to run up a bill on the town, because when we got lawyers, we got engineers, we got real estate people, and I say this with all respect, we're smart enough to realize, to protect the town, to say, let town council handle this decision, and here's what the issues are. But just to have them come in, I don't see that as the way to solve any problems, except run up a bill for town council.
Mrs. Brooks?
I was just going to mention something that came up with another board that I'm working with, is about the our current sewer treatment plant and the capacity that it has. And I don't know, but at what point does the Zoning Board of Appeals look at something and say, balance the decision with, our infrastructure needs? I'm using the sewer treatment plant, but the infrastructure of our town versus what this land appeal is going to add to the infrastructure of the town. Make the decision.
I was just going to mention, before I finished it, since I've been on the board, we always get input from every board. So we get a letter from Conservation, from the Building Department, which helps us. We get letters from the tax people saying that, the real estate taxes haven't been paid on this piece of property, so they can't go forward with a variance. All the boards, since I've been here in a short time, I look at it, they all comment, so they're all getting information. So if the DPW comments, so that they're aware of what we're doing, and if we're going to grant a variance for 64 units of residential housing, they're on notice, and they'll send something right up and say, we have no issues, or we have an issue, and here's the issue. It happens, every variance that we've had, when I pick up my package, there's a letter of denial, and there's input from the DPW, from Conservation Commission. We had one recently that I thought was a no-brainer for a variance. I looked at the package, I said, gee, this is a no-brainer, and all of a sudden we get a letter saying that it was in a aquifer recharge area. Now all of a sudden we got to find out, are we going to ruin the aquifer because the person, I think they were putting a pool shed around a swimming pool, which I said, that's a no-brainer, but they said, no, it was in an aquifer area. We get that information from DPW or Conservation Commission. Came right up and said, now we got another issue that I didn't think of right away. But all the boards, that's one thing I like about being on the board, is that we get notices from all the boards, and as I said before, our decision has to be unanimous. So it's not one of these things that somebody to say, I'm going to vote for, I'm not, and somebody.
Any other comments?
I just want to, that was a great question.
Great.
And I can't remember everything, and I wasn't expecting, I didn't know how elaborate this was going to become. But the point you raised with regard to the sewage treatment plant, I wasn't even aware of it until we saw the DPW note on one of the, it was a comment that we had as part of our packet on one of the last hearings we just had. As a matter of fact, I asked Michelle to have the acting DPW superintendent, I think it's Mr. Barber, to provide us a written further narrative as to what the situation is. It's my understanding that he's actually, on his own, decided that he's going to be present at the next hearing that matter is scheduled for. But the problem I have with this is, regardless of what he might testify to or he might provide us as information, when we look at the statute that guides us in making our decisions, it really has no relevance, unfortunately. I hear this word 80%. He could be at 100. We could be over 100% capacity. When we look at this, we're looking at bylaws and not necessarily other restrictions that may apply and have a different governing board that speaks to that. But for us to look at the set of facts and apply it to it's 48 section 10, and it's got 4 criteria, I call it the 4-prong test. If they meet that, and quite frankly, we don't even consider, based on the statute, we're not to consider any other restraints with electricity, with water pressure, sewer restrictions. That's not within our purview, unfortunately. We don't have that power.
That's my point exactly, because I think that having that conversation with Mr. Barber here, possibly in front of you to tell you that, it would let people know that you can't change that. We have to have a new bylaw, and that's why we can't do it. And I think that's what people need to hear, and if you could consider that kind of visibility in your decisions, and maybe it may change your mind, maybe it won't, doesn't matter, because you do the best you can with the information you have. That's a perfect example, and if you could, from my perspective, and I can only speak for myself, that kind of visibility would be something, would be a real dimension to add to the work, the great work that you do.
I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Well, I think along those same lines, Mr. Tattlebaum, that you can't say no to a project because it's going to impact our infrastructure. But we're going to be looking at our 10-year plan of capital improvements, and we have a lot of items coming up that we need to address in town.
Yep.
Tough ones, difficult ones.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'll make it 10 seconds. Plus, I mean, we're the first board probably people come to start a project. So we're not granting site plan reviews. We're not granting conservation commissions. We make it very clear. We're looking at zoning bylaws. That's all we're looking at. You have to, we tell in the decision, there's clear conditions that you have to comply with all other applicable permits in the town. So we're not granting a carte blanche for somebody to come in because we approved a zoning setback relief or special permit. That's, again, if it helps once in a while, if there's a case that might warrant a joint meeting with another board, I think we're open to it.
Well, absolutely.
We're not,
And I see your point, and I'll be mindful of it.
The sewer and water is going to come up in every single meeting we have for the next 10 years. And if people can hear what's going on and understand that we're going to deny this, that, because we don't have the capacity. And because it becomes a factor, we need to address it now. The can will not be kicked down the road. That will be helpful. That's just one example.
There's a whole lot of money there,
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of
Anybody else?
dollars.
Anybody have any comments?
No, thank you.
Quality discussion, and I guess I speak for my compadres here to say that the work you put in, we all do it for the same reason. We're not paid to do it. We're volunteers, and the town needs 150 volunteers, 200 to run. And it's a tough job, week in and week out, and all we can do to try to help each other do a better job. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, thanks, guys.
We'll break for 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
3.
3 minutes, okay. Thanks again.
Yeah, 3 now.
Unofficial break.
Hi, how are you? Okay.
I'd like to reopen the Select Board meeting of June 5th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing while we honor our veterans, both past and present. Thank you very much.
All right.
This meeting is being recorded. We have one member who's on Zoom, so we will vote individually on all votes taken today. That message was not recorded. Okay. The warrant's been signed, and we are ready to go. Served well, alternate premises, Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, the representatives of the sale loft had the last-minute issue where they were not able to attend tonight's meeting. The applicant is looking to alter their premises at the sale loft to expand in 2 phases. It's in the packet. It's been approved by all town departments. It's really just up to the select board. The board can choose to take the matter up for approval tonight or continue it when representation from the sale loft can be here, but it's been reviewed internally.
And I made every effort to attend, and it also has been approved by all the other boards.
Correct.
Do we see any reason to?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I will gladly second it.
Second. Okay, any comments or questions? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimously. Congratulations and
Keep on serving those great
on
hamburgers.
sailing. Okay. We have some introductions. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so we have some new employees that I'd like to introduce to the board that they've met previously, but Chris Vitale is the new Assistant Town Administrator. Chris comes from us from the town of Leicester, where he was the Assistant Town Administrator. Prior to that, he was the Economic Development Coordinator in Bristol, Rhode Island. Chris has a broad range of experience with grants, project management, procurement, etc. Chris has been here 2 weeks now, and I'm very grateful, but he has really hit the ground running. He's been organized, he's been responsive, so here is Chris.
Want to talk a little about yourself, Chris?
Good evening.
Keep it under an hour.
No, I'll keep it very brief.
Time's up.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I've had the opportunity over the last couple weeks to get acclimated, get up to speed on the projects that Cody was working on. I talked to him just before this meeting, and I've been very appreciative for his assistance, bringing me up to speed on those projects, Sean's assistance, as well as the other departments. So, no, my background, I came from the town of Leicester previously as their assistant town administrator, so it's a much smaller community than Dartmouth, and so with that, I was very much in the weeds on a day-to-day, so taking a step back and focusing more on assisting with some of the long-term projects that Dartmouth's working on. I'm really looking forward to doing that. Prior to that, I worked for the town of Bristol in a director role. So I helped a lot with economic development, communications, and again, a lot of their long-term projects that they were working on from their master plan, I helped facilitate those projects. So a lot to do with reuse of decommissioned historic properties, infrastructure, and then similar to here, working on their home rehabilitation program. So helping some of the more needy residents within the community. So really looking forward to getting started here, and certainly any questions that you have, I'm here for you.
Mr. McDonald.
Yeah. First of all, being here 2 weeks and you're still here, that's a good thing. That's a good start. I was part of the screening committee for Chris, and one of the things that I found extremely valuable is the organization skills that he has. I can honestly say I've never been to an interview where a candidate has presented a 5, 10, and 15-year plan as to what they do. And Chris just kind of blew my mind a little bit. It's like, oh my God, this guy is like super organized. And I think that it's going to be a good thing, because government inherently sometimes is not organized. It's reactionary, and but getting to the point where we do have some organizational and some structure actually makes government work better for the people, and which I think Chris is going to do very well here, and I welcome you aboard. Plus the fact that it's a shorter commute now to work.
Much shorter. Thank you.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yeah, I too was on the committee to hire Mr. Vitale, isn't that correct?
Yes.
So I think Sean's put it right on target, but I think we saw something special in you, and you're not going to disappoint us, I'm sure. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, I was just going to mention that I've met with Chris already. We met last week briefly, and I'm thrilled that Sean has someone to work with now.
So is he.
Yes, yes.
Terrific.
Mr. Gracie?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. I just quite briefly, I know that you're well-tuned in grants, and we were doing a pretty good job, and I think there's a lot out there, and we want to make sure we get our share, and it's thrilling to know that you have that quality. And I look forward, we have a 2, 5, and 10-year plan ahead of us that is going to be gigantic in scope and cost, and being organized and getting that done and helping us through that, through those waters are going to be really important. So I'm really thrilled to have you on board, and Mr. McGinnis not only is too, but he spoke so highly of you in the beginning as well. So thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Next.
Next is our new library director, Dina St. Pierre. Dina comes from us from the town of Acushnet, where she was the director for 8 years. But she also worked for the New York Public Library as a senior librarian for 7 years. So she has experience large and small, and I've met with her a few times to talk about what's going on at the library. She's been very perceptive and picked up on a lot of things. She appreciates some of the initiatives they've put in place, but she also has some great ideas moving forward. So with that, Dina.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here this evening. It's a pleasure to see you all. I am Dina St. Pierre, your new library director. I grew up using Southworth Library, even though I grew up in New Bedford. It was closer. Southworth was closer than any of the New Bedford branches, and I did live in New York for a number of years, and when I moved back to the area in 2011, Southworth was my library of choice as an adult returning to the area. So it's actually pretty thrilling to be working there now because I have such fond memories from my youth of that library, but also as an adult coming back to the area and not having a computer at home. I was sort of the poster child for the adult who uses the public library for its resources. And my first job that I got back in Massachusetts at the Whitman Library was in part thanks to Southworth, because I used the computer there and I was able to send in my resume and all that. So it's really thrilling and an honor to be going there on a daily basis. I've also been spending quite a few hours every week at the North Branch. One of my initial plans is to figure out a marketing strategy to really unite the two locations. So it's Dartmouth Public Libraries, and even though they're located in different parts of town, what do we do to make it one library, to get us on the same page, so to speak, for some library humor. I've been here since May 15th. My last day in Acushnet was May 13th. I started here on May 15th. Been meeting the staff. You have a wonderful staff in place. I'm very excited to have inherited such a great, competent staff who are respectful of each other, and they've been super welcoming and respectful of me as well. So it's been great getting to know them, getting more familiar with the services, because Dartmouth offers a lot of extras to their library patrons. So there's the traditional sales network resources, but there's a whole lot more in Dartmouth. So I've been learning all about that, and what we can do to expand upon something that's already really good. So I'm excited for the future and look forward to working with you all.
Welcome back to Dartmouth.
Thank you very much.
I'll let Mr. McDonald expound on that.
I guess the easiest thing, the most easiest and the most comical thing to say is it true that New York has those ghosts just like they in the Ghostbusters? No.
Why do you think a child of the 80s wanted to work at the New York Public Library? That certainly helped my desire to be a librarian, but I never saw any.
No, it's just there's in the past here this town has had a long history of library directors that have stayed and made a complete impact on this town. And each successor has built upon what their predecessor has accomplished. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you are going to do with what they did and how better serve the community. Because, everybody says, nobody goes to the libraries. Well, that's horse hockey. These Southworth and the North Branch are used very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing it used even more.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will add, Southworth, I don't know if you know this, that's the highest circulating library in the sales network. So out of the 40 some odd public libraries that are part of the sales network, Southworth is at the tippity top consistently, which is extremely impressive. And one of the reasons why I wanted to come here, I wanted to be a part of what's already happening here and expand upon the great work that people like Denise Medeiros, who was library director quite a number of years ago, followed by Lynn Antunes. They've laid a great foundation, like you said, and now what can I do to expand on that? And I will add, I loved working in Acushnet. I loved the library that I worked in there. I loved my staff. I wasn't looking to leave, but when I saw that the Dartmouth position had posted, I couldn't not apply because it's Dartmouth. So I would love to be here for the long term and, see us through. And I got a few decades in me probably, so so we'll see what happens, but I'm really excited to be here.
I was asked by this committee to be the representative on the committee to choose Dina, and I'm happy to say that it was a unanimous decision by the board, the interview group, and I've had a chance to meet with Dina since she's come on board, and I just love her enthusiasm. Also, she knew Lynn and has known Lynn over the years, and so she has, heard from her the things that we've done in Dartmouth. She heard about the building and the trials and tribulations of all of it. So she comes in, even though she was not working with us, she comes in with a lot of background knowledge about where we've been and where we want to go. So I'm very excited that she's here.
Mr. Gracie?
No, I'm good. I just want to congratulate Dina and wish her well.
Thank you.
I just, briefly, I just go back to the town meeting where we were voting on whether we should build the new library or not. And someone stood up and said, "Why are we doing this? Because nobody uses the library." And then I think she got lynched out of the room because the support was there. The new library came on board in the beginning of COVID. It never really got its chance. And when you talk about marketing and magnets, it's a really exciting time because we can cover a lot of territory with those two buildings and have all kinds of new activities. It's just a thrill to see it's going to happen that way. So congratulations.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Today, Dina had an open house at the North Branch to meet patrons, and on Friday of this week, June 9th, from 10 to 12, she has a meet and greet at Southworth Library.
Yes.
So
yeah,
anyone
that's-
in town should go by and
Please
meet her.
do. The Board of Trustees provided some refreshments, so I had a coffee at 5:30, which may prove to be a mistake a little later this evening. Got to get a good night's sleep for town meeting, right? But thank you very much.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McGinnis, next is Open Space Plan Letter of Support.
Yes, our planning director, Christina O'Grady, is here to talk about the open space plan letter of support required of the select board.
Hello, everyone. Prior to Cody leaving, he had started working with SERPED on the open space and recreation plan, which is a 7-year plan. I've taken it through the rest of the way. We now need letters of support from the SERPED, from the planning board, and from the select board in order to forward it to the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. It's the Division of Conservation Services. We anticipate after receipt of your letter, we're ready to send it. The planning board has already drafted their letter and signed it. SERPED had said that the department may kick it back because we do not have an accessibility administrator like we've had in the past. I guess it was an elected position. I don't anticipate any other problems, and they often send it back to each community once, and that seems to be a common thing. So Sean and I have talked about that, and that is something that he'll be working with you all on and with other department heads in order to bring that part to fruition. But other than that, the plan is ready to go, and we have been advised by SERPED to move forward in that direction. I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
I'll just add to that. So the SERPED was in to present the open space and recreation plan a number of months ago. The board voted to approve it. We just neglected to write the letter of support, which is required. So now it is here in front of you, and there's a draft in your packet.
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft as presented.
Second.
Any questions? Excuse me. Any questions or comments?
The only question I have was regarding what she said about an accessibility administrator. Is that something new that SERPED is requiring?
Us having that previously, we're going to wait to hear back from them
Okay,
on whether it's required. So
Thank
not to my knowledge, and we did a little research.
I guess a number of years ago, it was some type of a board and a person from the community that was part of it. It was not a staff position or anything like that. They've just won that seems to be something, they being SERPED, seems to be something that is kind of piqued their interest recently. We have met all of the requirements for accessibility, so I mean, we might be fine with it. We have shown great progress in that area, and hopefully we won't have that problem, but I was just warning you in advance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Shall we vote? Yep. Okay. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous. Thank you, Christine. for
Very
sharing.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Next is the spread appointment to Regional Commission. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so previously the board voted to appoint me as the representative to the select board on the regional commission at SERPED. Now that Chris Vitale is on board, we're looking to
Well, that was
have
quick.
the board. Yes, very quick. We're looking to have the board vote to appoint him as the town's representative.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Vitale as the representative.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or questions? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Congratulations.
Nice job.
I understand it's a
You'll have a
phenomenal
lot of
job.
fun there, trust
It
me.
is.
It'll be wonderful.
Yeah, good luck.
I meant to ask the librarian if she was a Yankees fan. Did you ask her?
No, no.
Did you ask her when you interviewed her?
What, I didn't
The
hear you.
librarian is
The
a
last time I
Yankees
asked
fan?
somebody that, they were a Jets fan, and I was upset.
Okay. Okay, next, UMass Dartmouth request for work on town land. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so we have requests from representatives of UMass Dartmouth to do some research work on town property. They're going to come up and explain the project, which is pretty interesting. And it's also been reviewed by our conservation office, and Mr. Garrett has provided a letter of support of their project as well. So,
Thanks for coming and your patience waiting for us. Could you introduce yourself and give us a little information?
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Sheriff. I'm an associate professor at UMass Dartmouth. That?
There you
maybe. And this is
My name's Haley Nugera. I'm an undergraduate student at UMass Dartmouth.
and she'll be assisting with the project. So the project is basically to try to understand the impact of road noise on predator-prey interactions and how prey respond to the risk of predation. So we are asking permission to use what?
It's map 55, lot 7 is what you guys called it, I believe.
It's
yeah.
it's a parcel of land right along the 195.
Mm-hmm. We've got it on our map.
Yeah. And so we need parcel of land with close proximity to the highway so that road noise can actually interfere.
It's the road
So
news.
sorry.
Yeah.
Here's a rookie for you.
There you go.
Oh, boy.
Rookie mistake.
I'm glad it wasn't my phone.
how's the select board react to noise, right? Just like their project.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to regroup and start again? It probably upset you, so.
It did. Yeah.
Didn't make it across the street.
Terrible.
And so then on that parcel of land, we will do audio playbacks of owl calls for 40% of the time at night. So this is something we've done for quite a long time now to study predator-prey interactions. So we study mice. We're basically going to go out and catch a bunch of mice and live trap them. So they get caught, they get let go right where they get caught. So we have a grid on this parcel of land that will play owl playbacks and another one that has no sound. And we know the reaction of mice to predation risk. We know what we should predict. And what we want to see is if road noise interferes with that. And so there's 4 areas, 2 really close to the highway, 2 further away. 1 each has a predator playback being played on it, and 1 each is silent. We will go out and live trap mice. So we've used these Longworth traps. Basically, the mouse walks in, the door closes behind them. And we go out and measure their biology, so how much they weigh, what sex they are. Give them a little ear tag, so if we catch them again, we know that we've caught that one already. We collect a fecal sample. We can analyze fecal samples for stress hormones, same ones that we have. And then we'll be doing these open field trials. They're called open field trials. Basically, it's a box about a half meter by half meter. We put the mouse inside and we see what it does. We have a camera on top. And that actually gives us an assessment of their fearfulness. So if they use the sides more, they are more fearful. If they use the middle more, where it's more open, they are less fearful. And then once we're finished with that, we just put them back where we caught them, and off they go. The experiment is going to run for 32 days. And the playbacks go 4 days on, 4 days off. And like I said, it's 40% of the time at night, and about 10% of the time during the day with with barred owls and red-tailed hawks. I think that's it.
Mr. Mickelson got a D- in his biology class, but he could be of some assistance there
Yeah,
if you need some help.
yeah, I'd love it. So I actually have a question.
Absolutely.
So have you, obviously you must have done this in the past.
Yeah.
So how is this experimented work? Did you do it here in the same area, or did you do it similar areas where there'd be a lot of road noise, an interstate?
So we would need a lot of road noise. So we could do it somewhere else. That's an ideal location in terms of proximity to the university, proximity to the road, and forested sort of tract of land. Yeah.
And your experience, how many tests have you done over your career?
I've caught tens of thousands of mice.
Really?
Yeah.
God bless
yeah.
you.
And we do these similar playbacks with all sorts of things. So mice, I work with mice, caribou, deer, snowshoe hares, ground squirrels. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, if you tell me your favorite movie's Ben, I'm leaving. Is this between Fons Corner Road and Reed Road? You know offhand? Or is it just, because I'm looking, I do see a body of water, so I'm wondering if this is within the Nokochoke area?
It's not the Nokochoke, it's across from it on the other side.
Oh.
Okay, all right.
So off of Crossroad, like Crossroads rather
Okay.
than like Hicksville.
All right, because I live near the Nokochoke area, so we do have, the red-tailed hawks, but we also do have, even though we haven't seen them so far this year, there are some eagles in the area.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the owls we chose are local-ish, so barred owls. You hear them all the time. There is also the eastern screech and the great horn, which are less common in the area, but they are supposedly resident.
Well, let's put it this way: there's not enough around them. There's not enough of them around my house because I still have a bunch of rabbits that I want to get rid of. So,
You looking for a rabbit?
No, I'm not actually. But I can tell you, more than likely, your experiment will have there will be some impact because I'm south of the lake, so from 195 off of Reed Road, and yeah, at night I can hear the trucks and the cars going up on the highway.
Yeah. Yeah, we ran a preliminary work with this, and we found that, so this was on a much smaller scale, not sort of at a greater area, but we targeted specific animals, and we actually did playbacks of road and playbacks of owls, and the road mimicked an actual 24-hour cycle of a road.
Yeah.
And yeah, we found that on that small scale, mice fed as though there were no predators there, which is not necessarily good for mice. And then you can scale it up. But basically it showed pretty clearly that with that experiment, that the road noise really interferes with prey's ability to detect predators. And so now we kind of want to take it to a larger scale and see what happens when there's an actual road and we're using these sort of larger areas.
Okay. Thank you.
You do? Yep.
You do need to vote on it, okay.
Is this the same area that we saw that they wanted to put in the bike paths? Yeah. So is that happening simultaneously?
They're all done. There's a group clearing some of the paths in there, bike paths. They had requested permission from the board. I think they're done.
Okay. But maybe they'll come across a biker.
Yeah,
It's not.
We've
it's
occasionally
not
come across
motorized bicycles,
people,
though.
and it's pretty hard to find places where we could work that there aren't too many people. Yeah, especially close to roadways.
Right. Okay.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, we are prepared to vote?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the request.
I'll be glad to second it.
Any questions or comments? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous. Thank you for including our town in your research.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to come out and
Good luck.
Help
see
catch
some
mice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll pass.
I got a couple of rabbits you can have.
No, I got enough.
Okay. Excuse me. Next would be the Charles Christie Bridge dedication sign.
The chief is here.
Chief Levesque, please step forward. Thanks for waiting for us.
This goes the wrong way.
Good evening. I just wanted to provide an update. We spoke earlier about Charles Christie. So this is another project along 195. Not catching any mice though, but we are looking to put up this new design of a sign. This would be on both sides of the overpass. We're working with Senator Martigny's office on this, as well as Mass DOT, to get the sign designed, approved, and hopefully installed prior to August 18th. We're looking to do a rededication on that date of the overpass. So that was all I had. Just wanted to keep you informed as to progress on that project.
We don't have to vote on
No.
on this, no. All right, so 8/18, huh?
8/18, yeah.
Okay.
I'll just
Okay.
communicate with Mass DOT.
We all
and
look
make sure-
forward to this.
Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Plus,
The New York thing,
Officer Christie was included in
the Washington thing.
the Washington Monument also.
Yeah, the law enforcement memorial wall. He was placed on that wall over the last couple of weeks during National Police Week. They have the candlelight vigil, and his name is now included on that wall.
Terrific.
Nice work, Chief. Anybody have any questions? We don't need to vote on it, so look forward to the event.
Thank you.
Keep
Thanks for your
informed.
patience waiting for us, too.
Anytime. Thank you. Have a good night.
Please remind us. Have the office remind us, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, next would be Broadband Advisory Committee resignation, Kevin Laranger.
Yes, in your packet, there is a resignation letter from Kevin Laranger from the Broadband Advisory Committee. The board just needs to vote to accept the resignation.
Make a motion to accept his resignation with regret.
And I regretfully will second it. If there's-
Any discussion or comments? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous. Thank you for your service, Mr. Laranger. Next.
Coincidentally, we had a letter of interest to be on the Broadband Advisory Committee. So on your agenda is the letter of interest from Chris Oliver, who's also a member of our school committee, to be appointed. Unfortunately, he was not able to attend tonight because he has a school committee meeting, but you can see his letter of interest in the packet.
Yeah, I know Chris has been involved in technology, so I think this is another good choice.
It'll be a great choice.
That way he also keeps Saul in check too, so. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
They're going next, man. Okay. Any questions or comments? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 5-0 in favor. Very good. Thank you, Chris Oliver. Next would be the Broadband Feasibility Study Recommendation.
Yes.
Man.
Please introduce yourself again and fire away.
Everyone, Sal Raposo, Chairperson of the Broadband Advisory Committee. Yes, I will miss Mr. Laranger. He was a very smart individual, had a lot of good information. He shared it with us, and we learned a lot from him. So and I look forward to meeting Mr. Oliver and continuing this project that we got going on. The last time that we met, I was asking to be put on town meeting to receive funding so that we could issue an RFP to hire a feasibility company. After receiving word that we have the funds available, our committee took on the task of looking at the RFPs that came in. We received 4, and of the 4, we had one that stood out head and shoulders above everyone else. We recently had them come in. It was Mr. Jeff Christensen from Entry Point. And after meeting with him, we unanimously agreed that they are definitely the company to go with for many different reasons. One in particular is that the company itself and the way they operate, they believe at their core that broadband is something of a utility now that is vital to a municipality and its future. So we also like the fact that he is already in communication and dealing with other local municipalities. Like for Haven, we actually had one of the gentlemen from the Westport Broadband Committee sit in our last meeting, and he shared some information with us as well. And I think that having Entry Point work with us and their interconnectedness with several of the communities surrounding us will work to our advantage at some point. So I guess the next thing is to get the board to sign a contract with Entry Point to continue this project that we're working on. That's looking pretty good. And I'm also here to answer any questions if you have any.
I have one question. Did you say that Entry Point's also working with Fairhaven and Westport?
Yes, ma'am. And Quincy. And they've done some rather large projects. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, I think you said it was Detroit?
They're in the middle of getting something from Detroit.
Yeah, they're looking at the city of Detroit. So I actually watched Mr. Christensen's YouTube. He had a TED Talk, and it was very nice to hear the way he explained it and the way he feels about it. It was a very different conversation. I wasn't expecting, companies looking to make money, but their company they're focused on the municipal broadband side. They believe wholeheartedly in the utility aspect of it, how it's no longer just something to have. It's something that is needed for economic purposes as well as for education and everything in the municipality going forward. So it was a very easy decision. As soon as he walked out of the room, we all looked at each other and we were like, yeah, this is who we got to go with. It was very easy. One company put up a good fight, which was Fujitsu, but they weren't in the same scope that we were looking for, where Entry Point just knocked it out of the park in the presentation and the fact that they came down and sat down with us for an hour and a half. It was really good. It was a really good meeting. I really enjoyed meeting him, and I look forward to working with them going forward.
Wonderful. Seems like we've found the right person, the right company.
Oh, they're amazing. I personally, I was thoroughly impressed. They got their ducks in a row. They know what they're looking at. They know what they want to do, and they know how to get it done. And pretty much every question we threw at him, he had an answer for. Whether it was funding or design, didn't matter. He had an answer. Didn't have to I'll get back to you on any of that. He was just right there, bing, 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 and we were like, yeah, this is easy. This is how it's supposed to be.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
You.
Yep. Yep. I know that Fairhaven is way ahead of us in this matter, but at the moment, Robert Espandola, one of the selectmen over in Fairhaven, is also contacting other people in the area to look at this on a regional level instead of a town-by-town basis. So I know that's part of that, and I believe Entry Point is part of that discussion through Bob's emails. So I think that's... I think going at this at a regional level is probably one of the better ways of handling the broadband, because it brings more customers, I guess, for all intents and purposes, and more ability to reach. So it's important that now you have Dartmouth and you have Westport, which are now side by side, which creates a nice regional, and we have Fairhaven. We need to have that missing piece in the middle. And I think that's something that we need to have, because if we can get New Bedford involved, now all of a sudden you have 4 communities, well over 200,000 potential customers. It may grow beyond that, and I think that'll create probably what we all envision this is to hope to be.
Right. I've sat in on a couple of the meetings that they've had with the coalition, and they cover a lot of different things. They cover equity, and they cover laws and rules and regulations. As far as the regional aspect, as far as I've been trying to get off the ground, is I'm thinking that the smart move would be to try to get elected officials and people from the broadband committees from those individual communities to sit in a room. I think that is the smart move going forward, because New Bedford has their ideals, Westport has their ideals and their situation. We have ours. Fairhaven, of course, is way out in front. But I do believe, and I do agree with you, that piece in the middle is a vital component if we want to do the regional thing. If we don't want to do the regional thing, I don't see any reason why we can't do it on our own. I do think that, again, this is me speaking now, not the committee. I think it's possible that Westport and Dartmouth could actually do something together, because we share so much border, and they have. So what we have in this community is we have a high concentration of population in one area, and very sparsely in the north and the south. And the farther south we get, the farther it is. So laying that cable becomes more expensive by the mile. So since Westport has that similar issue, having an interconnected system, I think would probably work for both municipalities. If we could get New Bedford and Fairhaven to drop in and work on a regional level, well, then it's like BJ's Wholesale. The more people in there, the cheaper it gets for everyone, and the take rate and all that stuff. But I think right now what we need to really concentrate on is getting the feasibility study, primarily getting the survey data to see where we are as a community and where the people of the community feel about this. And again, Mr. Christensen we asked him about the survey questions, and he said it more than once, that the numbers are always very high. It's always very favorable. So I think that that's what we should concentrate on right now. But if you wanted to discuss off to the side, I guess, about potentially having some elected officials from each municipality and some broadband committee members from each municipality sit in a room and discuss this, I think it's a wise idea.
Anybody else? Is this a dynamically changing issue, or is it pretty much been steady as it goes since you've been involved in it pretty deep?
It's steady as you go. It's a learning process. There's a lot involved. I mean, funding has its issues. Geographic have its issues. But we're all learning, and again, each member of our committee brings something to the table. And I have to say this right now, but this guy right here,
oh yeah, he's
the man. He's a driving force behind it, and I'm glad to have him on the committee with us. He has his insight into how the system works currently and what we need going forward, and it's a process. But I'm enjoying it. We're all enjoying it. We all are marching in the same direction. We all see the promise that this is, and haven't been any really big curveballs, to be quite honest with you. I mean, at least at this point.
Well, your enthusiasm and the time you come before us as a leader shows through too. So thank you for what you're doing for us.
He knows how I am on the Dartmouth Helping Dartmouth page, as far as when we talk about the incumbent provider.
Or the ex-provider.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great.
We'll just need to take a vote too.
We need to vote on it.
We need to vote on that.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to vote
I'll make a
to
motion
contract.
to approve the signing of the RFP.
Yes.
Second.
Questions or comments? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. You all have a great
Again,
night.
thanks for all the
Again.
work you're doing for us.
Thank you, Peter.
You too, Peter.
The man.
Next, Dartmouth, New Bedford, Mass DEP CSO meeting update.
Yes, this is just an update to a collaborative meeting that was held last week between the town of Dartmouth, the city of New Bedford, and Mass DEP on the New Bedford's wastewater treatment combined sewer overflow public notification plan. As you may recall, Health Director Michaud was before the board a number of months ago to discuss issues with the temporary permit New Bedford had received in their notification plan, which is not really sufficient for Dartmouth. The town of Dartmouth drafted a letter to Mass DEP regarding some of the concerns. Mass DEP responded to New Bedford, citing the letter of concerns from the town of Dartmouth. We had a Zoom meeting last week with some representatives of the Select Board, our Health Director, like I said, members from the city of New Bedford and at Mass DEP. It was a very productive meeting. It talked about a number of issues and how to resolve them and what to do moving forward. The city is going to install some signs in Dartmouth as per state statute requirements. They also have a monitoring website that can be accessed, and it will be referenced on the signs. And moving forward, we talked about partnering on other issues that are relative to both communities. So that is the synopsis of the meeting. I don't know if anyone else has any comments.
Comments from Mr. Michaud?
Mr. Michaud, you want to comment on the meeting?
on this?
While Mr. Michaud is coming to the podium, I'd like to say that his presentation to that committee was factual. It was well thought out, and I think it made a real difference to the people sitting in there. The mayor was kind enough to, through his office, to have people show. We had a whole group of people from the infrastructure of the city, and I think Chris made a dynamic, Mr. Michaud made a dynamic presence there, and got the job done for us, and well represented the town, and it's a great job. Thank you.
Christopher Michaud, Director of Public Health, for the record. So, first what I'd like to start out with is that it was great that Mass DEP issued that letter, that determination, and that they made it in the interest of public health and the people. That they made a decision to require signage at semi-public beaches. That was a decision that was reserved exclusively for Mass DEP, and they made it in favor of the people. So, kudos to Mass DEP for that, because they could have gone the other way. And they made a decision in favor of Dartmouth. And the reason why I say that is that Mass DEP on this issue has done a great job. They did a great job with having a website with adequate information. Leading up to that meeting, I did a lot of very focused research, both with Mass DEP's website as well as driving to neighboring communities. Mass DEP has a website where they show on their Mass GIS layer all of the CSOs in the state of Massachusetts. That allowed me to realize that here, at least, below the old Bay Colony line, that line that shoots up, that kind of cuts off the south shore of Massachusetts and Cape Cod from the rest of Massachusetts, or that in the southeast region of Mass DEP, there are only 3 communities with CSO, combined sewer overflow systems: Fall River, New Bedford, and Taunton. Well, come to find out, Taunton has 1 CSO that almost never goes off. So we only have 2 cities that have CSOs in the southeast region of Mass DEP: Fall River and New Bedford. Fall River's CSO system discharges largely to an industrialized, inaccessible waterfront. New Bedford's, on the other hand, discharges to a waterfront with a lot of beaches and a shared waterfront and a shallow embayment of Clark's Cove. So it is a very complex system, a system that, as I now see it, it's not an easy one to kind of get a grasp on. But Mass DEP, at least in the short term, has required the signage and the protection of public health. So these regulations are working as the statute and the regulations intend to provide us with that notification. We also know that New Bedford is working through the administrative consent order that was issued by the EPA, and they're doing it in a manner apparently satisfactory to the EPA. And I say apparently just because I'm not their spokesperson for the EPA. But I've had conversation with the EPA, and it doesn't seem like there's any concern at this time with their progress. So, with all that being said, it was a good meeting because, we got the signage, which is the minimum protective. It's allowed us to learn more. Mass DEP has that website layer to show us so that we can see what's going on in Massachusetts. The only other city that I can recall that's nearest us that has any significant amount of CSOs is Boston, which got major federal funding and state funding to upgrade their sewer system. Unlike any of the ones down here, they got all that money back in the 90s. So, I think we also have to be considerate to that, as we may see some of the impacts of these CSOs this summer. And, with all that being said, Mass DEP also pushed out a report last year that allows us to look back on 2022 and see how CSOs performed and occurred throughout Massachusetts in 2022. I know that in my subsequent conversations with the Boston staff at Mass DEP that they'll be putting out that report in each and every year, so we'll be able to see it. And shedding that transparency on the functionality of CSOs throughout Massachusetts, with importance to here in Dartmouth, will allow the public and hopefully regulators and legislators to address those that may be in need in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the good news, we really got the necessary notifications, but it doesn't address the giant problem that faces us, but that's for another day.
There is a standing EPA administrative consent order that the city has been performing against or with, however you want to look at it. EPA is the chief enforcement agent of the United States. There's a lot of deference to them with the DEP, and based on my comfort level of the EPA's work here in Dartmouth, both at Resolve as well as Bliss Corner, I am comfortable that they have the interests of the people at heart, and they're going to work through whatever obstacles that may exist wherever they work in a orderly and systemic fashion in the interests of all.
Great. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, I think the good news is that we have put the pressure on where the pressure needs to be. And I think our discussion of this matter has enlightened our residents who live along that area or use the beaches along that area to be aware this summer, especially after a rainy event.
And I think also we need to worry about the fishing aspect too. It's when we get as per Mr. Michaud mentioned, if we get a giant rainstorm, it's going to overflow. That CSO is going to overflow, and it's going to be at its worst point that first 24 hours. After that, mostly clear water is going out of that. Is that correct to assume?
So we now have had the opportunity to put notices upon each and every one of the New Bedford CSO discharges. In Clark's Cove, those are the ones that are most impactful to us. We have CSO 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There might be one of those numbers that's been abandoned, but relatively 3 through 10. New Bedford, in late of 2022, switched how they would notify, and we now relatively get the notifications in real time, which is great, because that was one of our issues back in July and August of 2022, was that waiver that Mass DEP had issued in the early days of these regulations. So now we get them in real time. And what we know, and what the public may have a little bit of hard time understanding, is that New Bedford's in a little bit better of a position than we are. Because those CSOs that number between 4 and 10, which are further from us, 4 is right across from Burger King, which is that big hurricane barrier. Everything numerically higher, up to number 10, is on the opposite shoreline of Clark's Cove facing us. Those go off in larger rainfall events, or rainfall events that, maybe, 5-minute rainstorm and you get a half-inch of rain. So it overwhelms the system. In those rainfall events, a lot of the CSOs go off. But pretty much CSO 3 goes off more frequently. And that's the furthest from New Bedford beaches, maybe less impacting on New Bedford beaches, but most impacting along our shoreline. Until we have enough data to understand how number 3 impacts our shoreline. Again, it's furthest from New Bedford's, but it's right along ours. So we're going to need a little bit of time to figure that out. These regulations are not like a police order where if you defy it, you get arrested. It's a means of advising the public so that the public can make an informed decision about how they risk assess their use of the recreational waters. So, getting that information in real time will hopefully allow us to plan, to do some response-based testing. However, on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, unfortunately, we're going to be out of luck on the weekends because not only because of us, because of the lab. The lab is only open 5 days a week, and it takes 24 hours to run these samples.
Thanks again. Okay, all set?
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, next with the Director of Budget and Finance contract.
Yes, so this, in the packet is the contract for Gary Carrero, who's been filling in, or has been actually acting as the Director of Budget and Director of Budget and Finance for 6 to 9 months now. So Gary's done a phenomenal job. This just formalizes his role.
Any comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
I like it.
I love it. I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, comments? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous, 5-0. You have a
Now you're locked
confirmed
in.
Director of Finance.
Gary,
Yay.
Thank you, Gary.
Now you're locked
you
in.
deserve it.
You got no choice.
Okay, all set there. Next is the long-term capital planning team discussion. This came about as a result of my discussions with Mr. McGinnis and a result certainly from our joint meeting going back with the school and finance committees. I must say that we have made a commitment to the town and to these committees that we are ready to look at long-term planning like we've never looked before. We met once before a town meeting season. It was Gary and I and a couple of members from the Finance Committee just to kind of set the tone about what we're trying to do. Then we had the Joint Committee, and here we are now. And as far as I am concerned, from my point of view, and this is up subject for discussion, this is this long-term planning and looking at it a different way is one of our absolute top priorities here in our particular job in this going forward. And it's going to be a subject that's going to be on each and every meeting going forward, ad nauseum. Comments or questions? Anybody? Mr. McGinnis, anybody?
Mr. Tattlebaum, are you talking about the meeting that, when we had the joint meeting with school committee and FinCom, that you recommended having to look at the gap in what the school department was asking for, but then overall, that was the first part of that meeting?
The second was to commit to, and we talked about waiting to kind of get through town meeting and budget season, and here we are. And it's coincidentally, it's a great time because Mr. McGinnis has an assistant who can, so we're kind of got like full team. In my experience with Gary and talking about this, I think Gary feels about this stronger than any of us because how important it is, because we have to look at it in a different way.
And I think at our last meeting, we received one part of a report regarding the water system. And I know from DPW, they're now going to be looking at the sewer system in a report, and that is a big concern within the next 10 years of one of the big items that we're going to be needing to address.
Just a study and evaluating the DPW in itself. I say it many times, Mr. McGinnis is an engineer by trade, but he's also one fine administrator as well, and using his expertise to guide us through this because, let's face it, these long-term plans are going to include DPW more than any department we have.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Gary, thank you.
So, the chair is completely. When we met, I believe it was probably about maybe 4 months ago that we met. It was the chair, myself, also I think Bruce Brooks was there. A couple members of the
Bruce Brooks, right?
And
two members of FinCom.
Of the Finance Committee.
Thank
so I think what really the focus of this should be right out of town meeting in the summer is not only to talk about. I guess it's twofold. We talk about what we're looking for a capital for the next 10 years as we're developing these potential projects. But we also look at the funding of those projects and how do we fund those projects. A lot of it would probably be conventional borrowing, debt exclusion, so on and so forth. Because as the opera money now dwindles, we will have to go to that sort of conventional borrowing, because these projects are just too large to pay out of free cash, which is what we pay a lot of the smaller projects out of. But when you're talking a $3.5, $10 million project, that definitely has to be, a borrowing definitely has to be considered. So, I mean, the initial meeting I thought was great because we threw a lot of ideas out there, but as we start to focus in on what we really want to accomplish, I think that should happen over the summer, and not only, and maybe include a lot of the departments that, you know, the schools and such, because it's, these are large ticket items that are going to be coming down the pipe.
Well, I think the charge of the committee, first and foremost, is prioritizing these large projects and really understanding for the first time in my existence here as to what we can afford and when, and what additional planning and funding we have to face to do it. And looking at all these major projects. We had Bruce Brooks with us. He's, I'll say it in front of Heidi, outstanding individual, understand these short, long, and long-term capital plans. He's been part of the program, forced to kick some of these cans down that road, and those days are now have to be over. So
I think it's important too, when we look at projects that are underway, that may be in phase 1 or 2, but have future phases are also included, including things that we're getting grants for, just so that the people know what is being paid for by grants and what is going to be paid for on our tax rolls.
I mean, this will bring us down the way out to whatever happens to our septic and sewer system and how that affects it, because it's all part of that same package. Do we establish this committee? Do we talk about it? We vote on it? What's the procedure?
What I can do is draft a committee charge for the board to approve with the membership and its roles, and I'll try to do that for the next meeting, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Probably July.
Anybody? Well, I think Gary made a point, whatever, do it so we can meet over the summer would be good.
Yes,
So.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the other committee, I don't know if it's twofold, maybe there's some confusion on when we had the joint meeting with the finance committee and the school committee, was this budget advisory group that we talked about, and I think that may be an additional committee that we need to talk about to find, maybe at one point they come together.
That's regarding the school's budget, correct. So we talked about forming a committee to look at how to address FY25 school budget. That's separate, but that's another just as vital committee.
That's a pretty short-term critical problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Now moving on to the town administrator update.
Yes, let's see. All right, as everyone's aware, tomorrow is the spring town meeting, June 6th at 10 a.m. It's at the high school, so
9 a.m. 9 a.m.?
9 a.m. Did I say 10?
Special town meeting at 10.
Yes, that's right.
9 a.m.
So
You better be there at 9.
I'll be there at 10. It's at the high school. As you all know, generally in the past, it's been held at the middle school, so we're trying to get the word out that to town meeting reps that it is at the high school tomorrow at 9 a.m. Department of Public Works, they'll be sending out notifications starting this week regarding the cellular water metering device installations, so the public should be looking for those notifications. Online services, just an update. To date, we've sold over 2,000 beach stickers online or by mail. We had hoped to sell 25% of the 4,500 that are usually sold this year. We're actually close to 50% now. So there are there's still availability for in-person sales this Wednesday, June 7th, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Recreation Office here in Town Hall, as well as Wednesday the 14th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. here in Town Hall. In our continued effort to increase communication and transparency with the staff, we had another all-staff meeting on May 30th. It went really well. We had about 50 employees attend one of the 2 sessions. It was great. The employees, it was a good back and forth. They provided some great feedback, asked some great questions. It was a nice back and forth. I updated the employees on our HR benefits and training opportunities that we do offer. Talked about recruitment and retainment, how employees can do training to move up. So it was a productive meeting. We'll be having another one in another 6 months. The Community Services Outreach Team had a outreach fair at the Moby Dick Motel on May 24th. It was pretty successful. They were able to reach a number of people in need and provide them with service options and programs out in the community. This is great. We talked about this at our department head meeting earlier today. The Community Services Outreach Team, as you know, and we've talked about, are going above and beyond and doing great work, but it's hard to provide services to people in need because these people are in need, and they're at points in their lives where they may not have the time or the ability to go out seeking services. So the Community Services Outreach Team going to the Moby Dick Hotel to actually help them and go to the people in need is very successful. So they were also able to use the van that they have to drive over to other motels close by and offer services the same day. So they'll be doing that again in the future. Very successful, and I can't thank this team enough. They've done a great job. We are moving forward. As you know, we've received a community compact grant for a human resources assessment. That is starting this week, Wednesday and Thursday. They'll start reviewing the town's HR functions, what we provide internally and through Munis. And Denise Bosang, Melissa Jerome, and Randy Kay, for our payroll administrator and Munis systems analyst, will be overseeing that project along with Munis, our financial service provider. The Memorial Day Parade was very successful this year. We had great weather. I just want to thank Matt Brule for organizing that. It is, we talked about that as well too. It's organized chaos that he makes work very well on short notice. Well, short notice on that day, but he plans it for a number of months,
Yes.
so he does a great job. And the Council on Aging had their beach party last Friday, June 2nd. Thanks to Amy and her staff for putting that together. They had over 100 people attend, so it was a very well-attended event and great weather as well. So those are my updates.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Old business?
Yes, sorry, let's see. Bliss Corner, no new updates. The same with Lake Nokichoke, the Municipal Broadband Committee. You heard about that tonight, so they're moving forward. Mass DEP Title V amendments, no new updates as of yet since the last meeting that was held with the committee reviewing the comments. So we have not heard anything moving forward.
Comment from Mr. Michaud?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Select Board. Christopher Michaud, Director of Public Health again for the record. So I'm here to beat a dead horse. And the definition to beat a dead horse is to waste effort with little chance of success. But I don't look at this as a wasted effort. And this isn't directly about septic systems, but it's about what's driving these regulations, and that is nitrogen and the threat that nitrogen poses to our marine environments. The town of Dartmouth has faced many environmental issues, unlike that of some of our adjoining communities. I mentioned Resolve earlier. We're talking about Title V and what's driving this, nitrogen. So as long as I'm still standing and Mass DEP does nothing, I'll continue to beat this dead horse, which is composting. Mass DEP has remained silent. And I'm going to be very brief, which is unusual. This is from the state of Michigan. And I'm going to quote just the first paragraph. In the rush to find alternatives to landfilling of yard waste, federal and state agencies have identified composting as the main solution. There is therefore a need to address the possible environmental problems which could be associated with such composting operations. Compost may contain nutrients which could leach through soils to the groundwater, posing a potential contamination problem. So in 2018, in the fall of 2018, when I sat in this room and we told DEP about that with factual laboratory data, they've done nothing in 5 years. A month later, when Dartmouth Weekly wrote a very nice article in October, I think it was October 27th, and they talked about the environmental pollution resulting from composting causing harm to our residents, and that it would be erased because DEP wouldn't do anything about the composting pollution in their backyards. This wasn't prophetic, because in 1993, That paragraph I just read to you from the state of Michigan was written 1993, 30 years ago. But here in Massachusetts, 30 years later, Mass DEP hides under a rock on this issue. Composting is still going on in the same manner with disregard for the harm that it's causing to Dartmouth and our residents. And on Friday, I got a call about the stench in Patenarum from the low tide. And I thought to myself when I was out on the bridge investigating, I said, this is just one small inconvenience that those people in North Dartmouth have lived with for years. And even when that issue goes away by the odor, the pollution that results from the unengineered and lack of oversight at these commercial facilities continues on. And that's all.
I have a response that I had prepared for this meeting, my discussions with Mr. McGinnis. In my view, I think we've gotten a little bit of a respite. We haven't heard exactly yet from DEP regarding their rulings on the septic systems. I've said it before and I'll say it again now. It's up to us to take action on what is good for our town and what we take and show the DEP and the world and our residents that we can do better than we're doing now. In my discussion with Mr. McInnes, we decided that we should address the composting issue. That means a combination of, and I'm no scientist, but it means a combination of addressing the issue with our hands tied by DEP, whatever that is, going to similar towns around our area who may, and you can sure can help us on that, and build a small coalition with the towns that have the same problem we do. And whatever it takes to address the issue on composting, to prove to our residents in the DEP that we mean business, I think we should take that action and do it immediately because the clock is ticking. I don't know what they're going to rule on, but we have to take action on what's the best for our town. And I've gotten assurance we have plenty of good scientists in town. We have a great director of Department of Health. And we have a town administrator to lead the charge. Whomever it takes, the group it takes, we need to assemble that coalition and go after the composting issue ASAP. And that was on my agenda for today. Whatever it takes, we have to show leadership in this group as to what we're going to do to take charge. Because we can sit around, it ain't going to happen by any other way. Comments?
I would suggest that we reach out to Mark Rasmussen from Buzzards Bay Coalition because we've been talking about the compost issue as well.
And this could be going on in the town of Easton anyway, right? This composting issue, Chris?
Back in the late winter, early spring, with the assistance of DCTV and the extraordinary work that they do over there, we produced a short video, maybe about 20 minutes long, from those sites that we know that are composting throughout Massachusetts. And from aerial photographs in those sensitive seasons where algal growth can flourish from impaired waters, we were able to observe in those aerial photos that these compost sites that are oftentimes placed right up against our sensitive receptors, rivers, streams, wetlands, ponds, are showing visual signs of impairment with antifreeze colored water that only exists in those seasons when algal blooms are expected. So
it could be any town with a farmland in the river, anyway.
So it's clear to me what's going on elsewhere in the Commonwealth, that this isn't some anomaly, that this is a baseline of very low standards that Massachusetts has for protecting the environments, the water quality, because they're strictly and solely focused on trying to save the ever-diminishing and collapsing landfill space. And while that's noteworthy, we can't allow harm to our water to go on.
In and around the job you do for us on a day-to-day basis, I think we need to ask you to help us build this coalition and get the data that we can then present as a town and hopefully as a coalition to DEP to put some teeth into it.
I appreciate that. I believe that if we can build that coalition and be incessant, like a dog on a bone on it, that hopefully will attract attention. But I believe that also part of that coalition has to include, and I'm sorry, I really do appreciate working with our legislators. They have done a lot, in my work with them and the health department. But they're going to need to be part of that as well.
100%.
Because there's nothing that scares DEP more than when the legislators
100%.
get on to our side.
Curious, does Fall River have any compost sites?
None that I'm aware of, nothing large scale.
Westport?
Westport has a site that we brought to the attention of DEP. It is immediately on the banks of the Westport River. We're talking about a couple hundred feet. We're talking about on a slope that drains straight shot into the Westport River. Mass DER goes, they're not registered with us. Mass DEP goes, they're not registered with us. You better stop it, but we're not going to issue you a letter. This was last summer, after 4 years of them operating without any permits and discharging straight shot into the Westport River. And on March 17th, they were still receiving loads. And on March 31st, I gave Gary Moran that information, and to this day,
It's a
nothing
private
has
enterprise.
happened.
So it's a
So
private.
yes.
Private.
It's a private enterprise.
They're all private.
So Westport would join our coalition for sure.
Hopefully, yeah.
We'll get it.
Yeah.
We only need 4 or 5 towns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? More on that. We'll look at our next agendas for that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your support there, Chris.
Just to
Yes, sir, Mr.
give you an update, I've attempted to contact the governor's office to have a meeting twice, and I've never received a return phone call. So, just to let you know. I'll let you keep knowing I plan on making another phone call tomorrow.
Okay, stay with it. Okay. Anything else? Let's see, what's next?
Minutes.
Here, we're done?
Minutes.
Minutes of May 8th, 2023.
After the review, everything looks fine. I'll make a motion to accept those minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? Let's vote. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous. The minutes are accepted of May 8th. Select Board updates. Any comments? Mrs.
I was
Brooks?
going to just let everyone know that I attended 2 graduations over the weekend. Yesterday, I was at the Dartmouth High School graduation, 239 graduates. It was a great, typical and great event. John Bro, the current, one of the current special education teachers, was the chosen guest speaker, and he did a beautiful job. I also wanted to talk about the graduation I attended on Thursday evening, which was from the Bristol Aggie Agricultural School in Dighton. Fabulous campus. I spoke with the superintendent, who is a Dartmouth High School graduate, class of 1997, which was pretty exciting, about having an event where they would invite the different towns that they serve so we could see their program. And I mentioned to him about the event we attended at New Bedford Voc, because they've done an outstanding job. 109 graduates. It took the same amount of time for 109 graduates there as it did for 500 plus graduates at New Bedford Voc and 239 at Dartmouth High School. But in those 109 graduates, each one, because there are so few, were talked about their activities that they involved and were engaged in at the high school and what their future plans were. Some were taking a gap year, some were going into a completely different field of study, some had already opened their own business. The trustees of Bristol Aggie have a sum of money reserved and work as mentors, so if someone wants to open their own business, they work with them. So there were landscaping businesses being open, horse training businesses being open. So it was, every student was celebrated, no matter where their next path is. So it was a wonderful event, but I look forward to hearing from Mr. Costa about an event, a time when we can go to tour the event, the site. It looks like a college campus. It's gorgeous.
Maybe we could take TCTV with us as
It-
well.
Money is no object.
And I will tell you, I sat there thinking about a number of students that I've had in my career that would have benefited from going to that experience.
sure.
And I'll be talking with the new superintendent about exposing our 7th and 8th graders to the various schools in our region, because it's not about educating our students at Dartmouth High School. It's about educating our students in a facility that meets their needs. And I think when we look at Bristol Aggie and New Bedford Voc, there are opportunities that they provide that the standard Dartmouth High School and standard high schools cannot provide and need not provide, because we have these other beautiful facilities who do provide them and provide them well.
You know, as usual, Mrs. Brooks, you always present us with a gem. I was a mentor there 20-plus years ago when it was a small school, and I was overwhelmed then. And to expose, any way we can expose our kids and residents to that school and get more there than they're going now would be a fantastic idea. I think it's just great that you thought of that.
It's beautiful.
Anybody else?
Mr.
I'll make
Mickelson
yeah.
attended the New
I'll just-
Bedford Voc graduation.
Right. I did, as a guest speaker, Friday night, New Bedford Regional Vocational had 474 students graduate. 39 of them were Dartmouth residents. In record time, 1 hour and a half, they were done, thanks to our former select board member and superintendent, Mike Watson. Thank you,
Also
Mike.
a Dartmouth High School graduate.
There you go.
Well,
You see, there's a
the
pattern
connection.
here.
And then at Bristol Aggie, the one other thing I'd like to mention, there are people in the town that remember Alan Haskell. He is a former student of Bristol Aggie and he was a magnificent individual. He was a dear, dear, dear friend of mine for years and years. And
World renowned.
He was,
without a doubt. We all know about the Boston Flower Show. So when Alan Haskell set up his booth, it was a matter of who was going to come in second for years and years, and to the point where they decided, and they asked Alan, they said, please, Alan, we want you to be part of this history. We would like you as on one of the boards to decide who would be the next winner. and he, of course, he did take it, and he was a one of a kind, one of a million. And he had presidents come down here. He had movie stars come to New Bedford and visit his property. And he was what a wealth of knowledge. And I'm sorry, I miss him a lot.
No?
I'm good.
Mr. Gracie?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
One more thing I wanted to say about the Memorial Day parade is I know that they've put up the flags. They're sort of banners for our veterans, but I noticed that some of them don't have both metal
Brackets?
pole brackets, so I don't know if they need to be replaced, or I don't know.
Who puts those up?
The flags are new. The banners are
The banners are new, but they have those two
Brackets, yeah.
Standards. Whatever.
standards,
Yeah,
is that what they're
right.
called, the two
Yeah.
brackets?
I think the
I've seen DPW putting them up, and I don't know if
Parks.
Matt,
But they
yeah,
were
Parks and Rec.
provided by the
Veterans.
Veterans have asked.
veterans.
Yeah.
Need a few more brackets, maybe.
So, yeah, I just think if you just check in to make sure we.
It was a project that I had initiated when I had a trip to New Jersey for a wedding. The town that we stayed in had something very similar to that, and I thought it would be a good idea. So working with our town veteran service officer at the time, Roy Oliveira, we were able to get the names of Dartmouth's fallen and any kind of information from families, specifically pictures of them. The ones that don't have a picture on it is Roy wasn't able to get any information from any family members at the time. So, but
Well, I love that they're displayed.
yeah, the idea is to put them up 30 days prior to Memorial Day and 30 days after Memorial Day, so they're there for a solid 2 months along the parade route.
Yeah, I believe Fall River does it also,
Very nice.
in their downtown area.
Nice project, Mr. McDonald. Didn't know that was their project. It's beautiful.
And I know that the flags were also done on Fons Connor Road again this year.
That's
Yes.
Peter Lance.
Right.
Peter Lance.
Yeah.
Yep.
He kept his word.
Yep, he did.
Thank you, Peter.
Matter of fact, he had a hard time finding the 50th spot for the flag, because there's 50 flags, representative of each of the states. And I know he was very upset because there was one flag missing, and he ended up getting that put up, so he does a tremendous job. I think the next time the flags are out, if I'm not mistaken, will be Flag Day, and then after that will be 4th of July, and then Labor Day, and then I'm not sure what it's after that.
I love seeing it.
Okay. Do we have
Better
any,
than those people begging for money.
do we have any other comments or questions?
I'm glad you brought that up. I did have someone contact me about the number of notices being put out, again, for mosquitoes, as well as other things.
I had a few
On
Signs?
poles, signs for
This
mosquitoes,
weekend, I'm going
and
to be
I
pulling
think
out signs.
I think it's mattresses, there's something else. Mosquito Mary.
Tree stumps, always
And-
tree
oh,
stumps.
yeah.
Mosquito Joe,
I'm
Mosquito
gonna
Mary.
fill up the back of my car with signs.
Fireworks.
Send them a
Don't
bill
forget
for
the fireworks.
Get the
I'm
fireworks.
going to bring it
one
to
now.
Frank's house.
Fireworks, which are illegal in
Other
Massachusetts.
one.
Right.
Why don't we
Still.
We'll find 10 signs for $100 a piece and charge them $1,000.
They are recyclable, so just drop them off at a recycle.
So anyone can just pick them up
Anytime.
and recycle them.
As long as they're on town property, if they're on private property, leave them alone.
Just figure it's a sidewalk.
Right, as
If it's on a,
Sean
if
said,
it's
as
on
long
a-
as they're on public property, pick them
something
up.
close to the road and there's no sidewalk, that's town property. Take it up.
Okay.
Pick them up.
Anything else?
Send the pictures to me.
Mr. McDonald, I didn't hear. Tomorrow morning is
Tomorrow morning,
See you in the morning.
9 o'clock.
9 a.m. at the high school.
9 a.m.
You
Did you say
bringing the coffee?
Sure.
donuts?
I don't bring,
Oh,
no.
sunrise? Oh, no, sorry.
Ouch, that hurts.
Okay, it's Mr. McDonald.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Okay, let's vote. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
McDonald.
That's all I'm
Mrs.
relegated
Brooks.
to.
Yes.
Mr. Gracie.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.